Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for another week, episode 140. And as someone, actually more than one person, was smart enough to guess, Nightfall in Middle-earth by Blind Guardian. But before we get there, Chris, my friend, how are you? How are you feeling?
I'm finally starting to feel like I'm back amongst the living after getting full-blown lupine flu after the werewolves of Armenia sunk their teeth into my flesh. I don't really know if any of that actually. Yeah, I mean, go to a concert with thousands of people, and you might end up getting sick, especially in the winter time. So, I just as of today was the first day I started to feel kind of back to normal. So we apologize for the delay. Should only end up being a couple of days though. So,
well, I'll say this. Thankfully, you weren't too sick. It wasn't COVID or anything like that. But I thought that Powerwolf show was phenomenal. I'm glad that we kind of will lead in there. Last we recorded was right before we went to see that show in New York City. Their first show on the North American little mini tour that they were doing. The place was rabid. I mean, the place was absolutely packed to the gills, well over 2,000 people. I have little doubt they'll be back, and I don't know there aren't that many places that are going to hold that many people in a standing room only show. So kudos to them. They really they put on a hell of a performance. And obviously we had talked about the set list the week before, but I thought that their live show was just so much better than they are on the album. I have a newfound appreciation for the band, and I'm so happy that I went to the show. It's probably the early frontrunner for show of the year for me because it was really just that good. And I don't know that I'll ever have one of their albums in my top 10 for the year, but I will definitely go see them live again. That was a hell of a show.
Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit too. I was seeing you enjoy it kind of made it more enjoyable for me, but I had just an absolute great time. It was just one of those, just a great crowd, great energy. The band had a great energy. The vocal performance was outstanding. I thought Seven Kingdoms did a great job opening. It was just a really fun night, and I think I counted over 20 people that I knew that were at that show that I got to see. That's not even counting people like Carl, who I unfortunately didn't even get to see, even though he was there in his full regalia, if you will. I just had the best time, and then followed by the following night, just getting to see a whole bunch of friends, yourself included, and people from just all different eras of my life, all in one place. It was quite the motley crew, to say the least, but just a really amazing long weekend for me, and a little cold was a small price to pay for a really wonderful trip. So I'm so glad we did that. That was very cool. And next on the docket, at least for me, will be Halloween at Terminal 5 in May.
It's funny. I'm looking forward to that show, obviously, but as I looked at the calendar, I missed two shows this past weekend just because the tours are becoming like fast and furious. Without getting into too much detail, Elevati played on Friday night with Omnium Gatherum, and then the next night Obscura played, and their tour came through. And at the end of the show, we'll announce some new tour dates for some other bands that have announced tours. But I feel like every week there's a show now, which is kind of insane. In terms of tickets, I have tickets to go see Queensryche next month, and then Halloween the following month, because I have to kind of pick and choose my spots. I can't be at all of these things, but needless to say, lots of good stuff coming out, and the music is coming out fast and furiously too. I want to just mention one or two albums that I kind of heard this week that really kind of struck a chord with me. The first, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to the new Haken album, Fauna, but it is a word we use a lot, I guess, dense. It is a very dense album, but it was a very enjoyable album, and the production was absolutely fantastic. It was just a very sonically pleasing album. I'm going to spend more time with it because I have a feeling that, I don't know if it's going to make the end of the year list, but it's certainly a very, very good album, and I want to give it its due time.
Yeah, I've listened to it twice now, and like you said, dense is the word. I've enjoyed it, but it hasn't grabbed me yet. But I think that an album like that, it's going to take a few more listens. So I plan on listening to it a few more times. But I agree with everything you said. It's really good. I've been listening to that, and the new Galnerius album also came out last week. I've been listening to that one as well. Album is called Between Dread and Valor. Just pretty much what you'd expect. It's fairly short. I think it's around 42 minutes. But just that great Japanese power metal. The only thing that kind of makes me prefer Love Bites to Galnerius is the fact that Galnerius sings like 98% in Japanese, so you kind of lose a little bit of something in translation, so to speak. But I mean, the music is really energetic and just really, it's just really good stuff. So looking forward to listening to that a bit more, as well as the Haken, like you mentioned. Speaking of Powerwolf, they have a new single which is going to be on their Interludium album, which I think we've mentioned before, which is going to be kind of like a compilation of rare tracks, along with I think about 6 new songs. And one of the new songs is this song called No Prayer at Midnight. And I got to tell you, this song is a freaking earworm. It's a little bit different. I know we talked a lot about like Powerwolf kind of having a signature sound. I feel like this kind of has a little bit more of a unique sound, and I think that makes it stand out. I like this song a lot. It's actually the last song on one of my newest playlists that I just posted on Spotify just yesterday, actually. I just think it's a fantastic song, and I being that we haven't recorded in a little bit, I can't remember which songs I mentioned last time, so I think I'm just going to call it a day there. I will mention one other track because I'm pretty sure I didn't mention this last time, but Redemption released another single from their upcoming album, I Am the Storm. The song's called Remember the Dawn. Have you had a chance to hear this? I think this song is fantastic.
I have not heard any of the Redemption songs, and I think what happened was I think I missed the first one, and then I just said, you know what? I didn't hear the first single. I'll just play the album when it comes out. So I've not heard it, but that's big praise, because I know you're not like the biggest Redemption fan. I think you appreciate them, but I wouldn't say that you're an ardent fan. And I know that you're not like the biggest, Tom Englund fan. So that's the high praise from you. High praise.
I feel like, at least on this song, I feel like he is channeling his inner Ray Alder a little bit, because it reminded me a bit of like the earlier Redemption with Ray on vocals. But I just think it's a really solid track. I liked it a lot. So yeah. Anything else? I'm pretty sure. Did we mention the new Firewind single, Destiny is Calling? Because that's another really good tune.
No, I actually haven't heard that either. But I you kind of know what you get from those guys. Like
yeah, that's a really good tune as well. Just really solid power metal. So yeah, I think those are just the. Now I'm looking at it, and you know what? I will mention one other band because I thought this was quite good. This actually was a recommendation that came from Nops. The band's called Mandroid Echo Star. They're a prog metal band, and they have a song called Rosalia from an album of the same name. I kind of described it as like Coheed and Cambria, but with more balls. That's kind of how I heard it. I thought it was really,
very good stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. So
yeah, I agree, and I'll just throw out one more as well, just so I couldn't let you have all the fun. There's an Italian thrash band called Adverser, and they came out with an album called Portrait of a Wasteland. It's thrash, but it's not like your typical, Testament or Exodus, which is good, but it's a little bit different. They mix in a little bit of death metal, a little bit of black metal, and a little more of that classic heavy metal sound, like a Jag Panzer or something like that, and they kind of blend it all together with this thrash sound. and they put out a really, really good album. Again, it's called Portrait of a Wasteland by Adverser. I'll post a track in the coming days, hopefully, just so that everyone can take a listen. But if you're a thrash fan, Adverser, Portrait of a Wasteland.
You know I'm not going to let you get away with not mentioning Power Dong, right?
I was hoping you wouldn't go there. That's why I didn't post it on the site and why I sent it to you privately. Go ahead, do the honors.
Well, I sent this band over to both Caleb and Knops, and they both got a kick out of it. Caleb loved it, which I'm not at all surprised by. But it's man, like it's a goofy name. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. And the music video, I don't know if you noticed, the drummer was using dildos and not drumsticks.
It's the Steel Panther of power metal. Let's call it for what it is. But at the same time,
it's good.
It was really good, and I couldn't believe it. So this band comes out with a self-titled EP in 2022. Clearly, it was not on my radar. But then when I heard one of the tracks, I sent it to you. I'm like, I think you're really going to like this. Kind of ignore the name because it's absolutely ridiculous. And it is ridiculous, but the music was good, and I was pleasantly surprised. And I think they're out of Norway. I'm curious to hear what their full-length album will be when it finally comes out.
Oh, you said full length, and we're talking about Power Dong, so good for you.
Listen, we're full of puns here, but let's talk some Blind Guardian. We kind of left it as a surprise for everyone. We had put some hints in our Facebook group, Metal Exchanges at Facebook. And a couple of people got it. A couple of people picked some really interesting things, and it kind of gave us food for thought. But we are going with the classic power metal album from 1998. Obviously, it came out April 28th of that year. I remember getting this album in either late 98 or early 99. It was, I think Century Media had distributed it in the U.S., and I actually remember buying this album at Tower Records. Tower Records. So now going back almost 25 years. But what I remember most was that, like, I picked it up and I didn't buy it probably about 3 or 4 visits to the store. And eventually I just caved in. I'm like, I have to hear what this sounds like, because I had never heard a note from this band. And this was really my first exposure to Blind Guardian. But I knew the name just because of, the affinity we had for Halloween and the German comparisons there. Did you get it the same way, or had you heard of them prior to picking up this album?
This was my first Blind Guardian album as well. And I think I also bought it in a store because I came to realize that this was the first Blind Guardian album to come out in the U.S. and their back catalog would be released after this, but this was their first album to come out in the U.S. and so this was the first album I ever saw sitting in the racks going to the CD store. So I think I bought it on a whim. I can't remember if I asked somebody to buy it for me or what, but I remember listening to it for the first time and it being a little bit jarring. Like I had heard Hansi's voice a little bit on like guest spots with Gamma Ray and Ed Guy. So it didn't blow me away immediately, but the more I listened to it, a couple of songs in particular really stood out. But then as years went by, like this album just would be something I would just go back to and now this is probably the first time I've listened to it full all the way through in years, and I'm just like, damn, like this album is so epic. There's so many great songs on it, but then when you intersperse all of these little like segues and things that kind of build the story, you really realize like they fit a lot into a one disc album. Like this could have easily been expanded into a double disc, like big to do, kind of like I think of like what Streets could have been if Sabotage had their way, or Keeper of the Seven Keys as a 2-disc set. Like this is a lot of epic that they managed to fit into like a short amount of time. It feels
it's long in the sense that it has so many tracks because there's a lot of interludes and spoken word sections and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's kind of a quick listen for an album that clocks in at over 65 minutes. Like I never, or at least this time listening to it, I never felt like, oh, I can't believe this album is still going on. Like it just moves because I think the pacing is so unique because you'll have a song, you'll have a 30-second interlude, you'll have another song, maybe you'll have two interludes and then another song or whatever the case may be. And it flows very nicely. But I do have some thoughts that are a little different than when I first heard the album. But much like yourself, I remember thinking at the time, like, damn, these vocals are not Michael Kiske, right? Like this was very, very jarring to me. And at the time, I didn't like growls. Obviously, that would I'd do a complete 180 on that. But like at the time, the harshness of the vocals I didn't appreciate, but I grew to like it, almost like an appreciation for like a fine wine or something like that. And then now I absolutely love it. And then he's actually one of my favorite vocalists to hear live because he can reproduce the sound, which is like almost incredible. And he's obviously got a very, very unique style, Hansi. But just to kind of roll through the lineup here, I didn't realize that Oliver Halsworth does the bass on this album. Matthias Weisner on keyboards, and I have to say he does a phenomenal job with the keyboards and the orchestration on this album. Just kind of two of the guests that are on here, and then obviously the band. It's Hansi Kirsch, it's Andre Ulbrich, Marcus Sepian, and Thomas Stouch on drums. It's the classic Blind Guardian lineup. But I thought we'd be remiss not to mention Halsworth and Weisner just because they play such a prominent role on this thing.
Yeah, like just some real big heavy hitting names in the power metal world, especially the German power metal world. 22 tracks in total. For years I had only copied the full length songs onto my iTunes library and left all the other stuff. I considered it like filler because I went through kind of a period where I would just listen to stuff shuffled all the time. And so like the last thing I wanted to do was hear like the 28-second, random thing from, Nightfall and Middle Earth while I was shuffling music or whatever. So I just kind of left them all off. And then I forgot, I don't know at what point I put it all back on there just to be a completist, I guess. But when you listen to the album start to finish, it's actually... I feel like it's useful to have those parts in between to kind of tie everything together.
It is, and to be honest, it's only really 11 real full-length songs, which is like, again, very manageable, but I think it's charming that the way they do this. And I guess with that, let's get into it. If you are a fan of Tolkien, this is the album for you. It's based on his book, The Silmarillion, which I have not read, although I have read a number of his works. In retrospect, I probably should go back and read that, although I'm not like the largest fan, but I would definitely appreciate reading this. But
so just straighten this out for me. So this takes place in the Lord of the Rings universe, but is not a Lord of the Rings book.
That's my understanding. If we are wrong, please add us and let us know, but be gentle. But that is my understanding. Same universe. But
yeah, I didn't realize that he had other books that took place in the Middle Earth realm that weren't Lord of the Rings proper or The Hobbit or whatever. So I mean, I'm not the biggest fantasy reader, so like whatever information anybody can give me is appreciated.
It's like, from my understanding, it's like the first age of Middle Earth, and it's supposed to recount the War of the Jewels, which again, I can't speak much more as to that, but that is my understanding. And all the lyrics on this album, including the spoken word parts, are written by Hansi. So that should give you an idea as to kind of what the driving force was. I would love to have a conversation about all things Tolkien with him, but we'll have to do that another day. And then obviously the music itself was written by Andre and Hansi for the most part, with some other, some credits to some of the other guys on a pair of tracks. But that's pretty much what it is. And the way this album starts is kind of iconic because they actually still open their live shows, not so much with War of the Wrath, although sometimes they'll use that, but often the first proper track, Into the Storm, is still used by them often as their first live track. And it is a phenomenal, phenomenal tune, in my opinion. I don't think it's the best song on the album, but this is the kind of song that really, I think, sets the stage for what this album is and what it would become. The War of the Wrath is really just that. It's kind of like the battle beginning, where you hear like the steel on the steel and the swords and the screaming in battle. And then all of a sudden, this classic power metal tune, not their heaviest tune, but so catchy with this big bombastic chorus. I think there's a real good reason why they open a lot of shows with it. And quite frankly, like you had mentioned, as a first Blind Guardian tune that I ever really heard, it took me a while to warm up to it, but now I really like it. Again, not my favorite, but a very good opening song.
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, holy shit, like this is like more than I think I had bargained for. I was like, is this too heavy for me? Like, I hadn't really got into some more of this like heavier kind of power metal, but it wore off fast, and I still, when I hear it, it triggers that thing in my brain of like the first time hearing Blind Guardian. It's so odd to me. That's just what I think of, and I'm going to kind of go through, thanks to the Wikipedia, the events of the story as we go along, just to kind of, because if there's anybody out there who's actually read the book, it might actually be kind of helpful to hear what the music is kind of representing. War of Wrath is this intro track, as you mentioned, and this Sauron is advising his master Morgoth to flee the triumphant valor in the War of Wrath. Morgoth sends him away and reflects on the events leading up to his defeat. And then into the storm, Morgoth and Ungoliant, I believe it is, fleeing from
right.
Valinor. After having destroyed the two trees, struggle for the possession of the Silmarils. Oh man, I think I maybe bit off more than I could chew here.
I'll help you out. After Into the Storm ends, it goes into like, I guess what I'd call like the first, not introduction, but interlude track, and that's Lamnath. And apparently this is Morgoth's scream of fear and how he summons the Balrogs to aid in his fight off the Ungoliant. And I don't have much to say about some of these interludes. They are short, often spoken word tracks. What it leads into, though, is the first song that grabbed me from this band. And I'll say this. I thought it would be a song that would get played out after a while. That did not happen. And that's the song Nightfall proper. This is an all-time classic song. If you know the band, you know this song. If you've never heard the band, stop listening to the podcast. Go play Nightfall. It's not my song of the week, but it is definitely worth hearing. This is a beautiful tune, and it kind of starts off like this ballad, almost like a power ballad, but it with this acoustic guitar during the first verse, and then it really just picks up steam. A monster chorus, and I think that it's one of the best live tunes in their set, and they play it every time you see them. And I just love, I think more than anything, this whimsical bridge, like 2/3 of the way through the song, and it just gives way to this powerful second bridge later on, ironically enough, because this song is kind of all over the place, kind of proggy in nature. Just absolutely awesome. And that second bridge, how it just goes right into the chorus, absolutely beautiful, and one of the highlights on the album, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I don't really know how to say much beyond that. That was really well put. It's one of my favorite songs on the album. It's one of my favorite Blind Guardian songs. I agree wholeheartedly. It is an absolute highlight of seeing the band live. Really great song. Kind of, again, gives me a nostalgic kind of feel for like the late 90s. So yeah, this is a really good tune. I am still kind of struggling as to what I want to make the song of the week. There's so many songs I really, really like from this, but I'm gonna keep it moving here. But this is a good one. In the storyline, Fëanor and his 7 sons mourn the destruction wrought by Morgoth, including the slaying of Finwë, which is Fëanor's father, and they swear to get revenge on him in spite of the Valar's disapproval. So yeah, this is just a really killer song. It's kind of amazing to think that like the first two full length songs are so like just strong right off the bat. But yeah, I think you really just took the words out of everybody's mouth with your description. So well done.
Thank you, thank you. We get into the next interlude, which is called The Minstrel, and it's probably about Maglor, the son of Feanor, who composes the song The Fall of Noldor, based on the Kingslaying. What I'll say about this is it kind of reminds me of like a bard playing an acoustic guitar interlude type of thing, and then it goes into the Curse of Feanor.
What does this song know about bards?
Yeah, I mean,
or I'm sorry, what does this band know about bards? Sorry.
More than I ever will, for sure. But they go into this bard-like thing, and then they go into the Curse of Feanor, which is where Feanor expresses his wrath and anger and relates the misdeeds he commits, especially the kinslaying, in pursuit of Morgoth. That aside, talk to me about this track. What are your thoughts on it? Because I've kind of changed my tune on this one quite a bit.
This is kind of like that. Blind Guardian has. I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself because I say this about a lot of bands that we talk about, but this is, I think, one of those like mid-tempo kind of Blind Guardian songs that I think it got kind of overshadowed by the Mirror Mirrors and the Time Stands Still at the Iron Hill type, the real big numbers and Nightfall. And so it kind of got like forgotten about maybe, or just didn't get the attention that it deserved. But this is a really cool tune. Maybe if not a bit understated, but it's a good tune. Just kind of a mid-tempo song, has a really cool chorus. I think this is a really cool song. I think if you had played it for me, I would say I remember the song really well, but I don't remember what the hell it's called. Like I wouldn't have even remembered the title of the song.
Right.
I think there might be maybe another song or two on this album that I felt similarly about. I feel like this song probably deserved a little bit more recognition. I wonder if did the band play this album in its entirety upon its release, or? So
I was going to get to that, but let me say a couple of things about the Curse of Feanor, and then I'll kind of get into what they did for this album. The Curse of Feanor was one of those tracks that I kind of overlooked as a kid, and I would even sometimes skip it to get to some of the tracks that you already mentioned, and I think it was a mistake that I truly regret, and I don't think this song gets its due justice. And what I love about it is the contrast throughout. It's pretty much mid-pace, but it's really surprisingly heavy. And the guitar work throughout is just incredible. And the drumming, the beating that the drum kit takes during this song is just nothing short of incredible. But I love the diversity to it because it's kind of all over the place, but maintaining that core sound throughout. To me, this is a song that could have easily been on the Imaginations album, which is a little bit tighter than this album, I think, and a little bit, and you don't have the interludes throughout, so it's just a real kind of a heavy hitter. This song belonged on that album, but because it never got its just due, I'm actually going to make it my song of the week. I was so impressed by this song, and it would have been so easy for me to choose a handful of other tracks that I want to give this its just due. So let's give it a listen.
I'll take the easy way out. So.
Let's listen to the Curse of Feanor.
Some crisp beauty, but all the spring went far. Upon the water, what calls my name? I'll keep on laughing. No regret. Don't feel the eyes of the dark eye. Morgoth, I cried. All hope is gone, but I swear even in that I will take part
before we, took a listen to the Curse of Feanor, you had asked about the live setting and whether or not they'd ever played this entire thing live, and the short answer is no. They have played quite a few tracks from this. Of the 11 proper tracks, I think they've probably played at least 5 or 6 of these live, but they never did the whole thing. And from what I understand, despite the demand being there, the band never felt that they could do this album justice. And so they just said, you know what, with all the orchestration and all the spoken word parts, they didn't feel that they could do the album its due. They instead just play selections from it throughout, basically every live show that you see.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, we saw them do all of Imaginations, and I'm not sure. Have they done any other of their albums in full, or is that just the only one they've done?
I feel like they might have done the bulk of A Night at the Opera, but they didn't play the entire thing. But they may have played like 75% of it on that tour. I remember seeing, but I don't know that they played full albums straight through. Although I feel like they probably would do it again, but I just don't think this will be the one unless they have a change of heart.
Okay. And did you mention the storyline aspect of the song, or?
I did. So we may as well move on to Captured, which is the next interlude. It's where Morgoth addresses the captive Maedhros, Feanor's son, and chains him to the Thangadrum Mountains. Again, excuse the pronunciation here, but it's another interlude, and then it goes into Blood Tears, which is where Maedhros relates the horrors of his captivity and his deliverance by Fingon. Blood Tears is another underrated song, in my opinion. I don't know that I love it as much as the Curse of Feanor, but it's what's really cool is how it starts very folky, like a very, very folky guitar sound, and then after the first verse, which is kind of slow, it really picks up steam. And I think that one of the highlights here is that Hansi kind of shows off his range and sings in a number of different ways on this particular track. And then at about the 1:30 mark, this thing takes off like a rocket ship, and it actually gets very thrashy, which is kind of cool. And it's got that toe-tapping beat to it during the instrumental section. I like this song a lot, and it's another one that I don't want to say overlooked, but it always played second fiddle to Mirror Mirror, which is the track that comes after it.
Yeah, I just really like the beginning of the song, just how kind of it's just a very chill kind of song, like really almost ballady in ways. But then, like you said, it picks up and kind of thrashes out. And the one thing I love about Blind Guardian is that I find that their guitars are so distinct. Like it's like their guitar sound has a tone that I think other bands don't really copy, and it just really makes you feel like it's Blind Guardian right away. And
couldn't agree more.
And like you mentioned before, the drumming on this album is just so strong. Like it's there's even just like a part towards the beginning of the song where it kind of has like that mid-tempo kind of drum kind of marching beat to it. I mean, just really fits the track perfectly. Yeah, I'm right there with you. This is another song that I kind of didn't get the love that it probably deserved, and probably because of what follows, I would venture to guess.
And what follows?
Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. This song makes me think of Brian. He loved this song. When I remember that was like his one takeaway from this album. He used to always ask to hear that song, and I always think of the music video, which was pretty much just kind of like clips of the band just in the studio or live or whatever. It was kind of like your run of the mill makeshift metal video, your no to low budget metal video. But this song is just a freaking banger, man. An absolute staple in their live set. But another song that, like, I think you had mentioned about Nightfall, like thinking that you would get sick of it at some point, but I'm not sick of it yet.
No, and what I love about it is not only is it a staple of the live set, it's like the closing song, and they always close with this thing, but they play it even faster than on the album, which I always thought was really cool. Like, they speed it up. This is, a perfect power metal song. Like if when I think power metal, this is up there for what I think power metal is. And it's kind of a simple track. It's not like the most complex arrangement, but it's just so epic and it's so fast during the bridge and the riffs are fantastic. And I also love how it has almost like a folkish, like a jovial feel to it in spots. I love that. And quite frankly, the second half of this song, the drums just steal the show, especially the kick drum. It just is so well done. It is an iconic track for a reason, and I don't know that this album ever gets to this level of perfection again. I think that the rest of the album has some really good high spots, but to me, this is the climax of the album on this track.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that, but the way that they can change the tempo of the song within the song, it's not even like, it's not just like, oh, the last song was, mid tempo, this one's fast. This is like the tempo changes in the song, and they do it in such a smooth way. This is a real classic, real power metal classic, and just a great song overall. And again, just gives me really good late 90s feels, gives me the nostalgia. But yeah, good, great stuff. But yeah, my song of the week is still to come. So
all right,
I agree that the album does kind of end a little bit. I want to use the right word. I just think that so many of the real like heavy hitting songs kind of come in the first 3/4 of the album.
I agree, and I think that like they're so good that it almost has to end a little bit weaker, and it does, in my opinion. I think as a kid, I used to kind of stop it after about the 60% mark or something like that. And so I know that the first half or the first 3/4 of this album better than I do the end. And I think there's a good reason, because that kind of stayed with me even to this, as I listened to it this week. Just getting back to the story for a minute, Mirror Mirror recounts how Turgeon, in view of his inevitable defeat, builds the city of Gondolin, aided by Omo. And then it goes into this, I don't want to say like, almost like a resurgence, but like Face the Truth is almost like, in my opinion, like a sign of hope. And you hear like the birds chirping in the background, and it's where Fingolfin reflects about the destiny of Noldor, which is ironically the name of the next track, Noldor Dead Winter Reigns, which is like the next full track proper. And that's where Fingolfin recounts his Noldor's army's passage from the icy waste of Helcarax and the prophecy of Mandos about Noldor's fate. If this means something to you, stop me. But he reflects on his own and his people's guilt and foreshadows their ultimate defeat. Again, it doesn't mean anything, but for completeness sake, talk to me about Noldor and what your thoughts are on this one.
Oh, this is another good. To me, I think this is another really strong track. Again, it kind of starts out like a little bit unassuming, and then like it speeds up and then slows down, and again, it's like this this real like roller coaster ride of tempos. I think it's kind of a more emotional song than some of the other full length songs. I really think Hansi's vocal performance, especially on the chorus, is really strong. I just think this is a really cool tune. I like that not every song needs to be like a mirror mirror kind of blistering type of song. Like Blind Guardian does a really good job doing songs of all types, and this is another one of those. It's similar to Blood Tears. It's just a little bit slower, but still heavy. This is another song I like quite a bit, and I feel like it's keeping the streak of just really good. Like of the full length songs so far, they really haven't had a miss yet.
I beg to differ a little bit on this one. I feel like it's a 7-minute song that would have been better served at like 4.5 minutes. And I feel like there's a little bit too much fluff on this one for me. I thoroughly enjoyed the upbeat sounding guitar solo midway through the song, but there are parts of this that are just a little repetitive to me. And I feel like they could have just cut it down I might be nitpicking. I don't hate the song. I just don't love it as much as some of the stuff that's preceded it.
That's okay. You're just wrong. That's all.
I'll take it. Battle of the Sudden Flame is just that. It's like a reference to the battle in which Morgoth breaks the siege of Angband and uses his Balrogs and dragons. It's a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. To me, it's just most notable is like the little flute interlude thing that they have going on.
It's very Renaissance fair.
Yes, that's exactly right. And then we get to Time Stands Still at the Iron Hill. Talk to me about this number, because this was definitely a favorite of ours when we were younger.
Oh yeah. This is my song of the week. I made a point to go back and list this album and be like, this is not going to be my song of the week. I'm going to pick something else and try to be, open-minded about the rest of the album, but it's still my favorite song on the album. I just, man, I'll never forget, one of my friends, Matt, who I went to college with, I would go through his music library, via the campus network. And I was looking through his music, and he just has this one Blind Guardian song, and it's Time Stands Still at the Iron Hill. So I go, Matt, why the hell do you have this one Blind Guardian song? He goes, I got it from you. I saw a song that was that was like based on Lord of the Rings, and I just grabbed it and I liked it. And so whenever I hear it, I think of Matt. But
that's great.
This is just another, much like Mirror Mirror. It's just a real like fast paced ass kicking, just like all, full speed ahead, like all the cliches. This song still, I think it just still resonates with me. I still think it's just such a fantastic tune. And I think I like it even more than Mirror Mirror and Nightfall, which, not everyone might agree with, but that's just kind of how I feel. There's something about it. I'm just like listening to it right now, and it just puts a smile on my face. Just the way that the bridge before it gets back to the chorus, where you hear like the folky kind of elements to it, and with Hansi's vocals. I mean, this song is just epic. So yeah, this will be my song of the week. Let's give it a listen, and then we'll discuss where the album starts to kind of drop off a little bit.
Dark Lord appears. Welcome to my lands. You shall be done. The star in the night and the lever of hope rides into this glorious battle alone. Farewell to the valiant war. The fate of us all lies deep in the dark. When time stands still at the Iron Hill. The fate of us all lies deep in the dark.
So, without fail, every time I listen to this track, tell me that intro doesn't remind you of Star Wars.
Yeah, I could see that.
For some reason, I always hear like Star Wars at the beginning of that song. I don't know why. I love the little guitar noodles that they kind of do throughout this thing. I think they're absolutely awesome. It gets stuck in your head. And the orchestration really stands out on this track. On an album that's heavy with orchestration, I feel like it really, really stands out and pops on this track. And it has that big, like epic, big sound to it. And it's almost like their way of saying like the best is behind us, because the rest of the album, as good as it is, and I enjoy it. Like I can easily listen to the rest of this album. I don't love it as much as
I'm waiting for us to get flamed for saying this. But
it's not a perfect album. Like
I know, but I feel like someone's gonna come back and be like, "Dark Passage is my favorite Blind Guardian song ever."
They have a right to be wrong too. I mean,
don't talk shit about Nam the Wise. Like, You know,
I tried to get an interview with Nam the Wise, but it didn't work out. I'm not saying it's not a great album. It's fantastic, and I think my score will reflect that. But at the same time, I don't know that it's as perfect. I used to think this was like a perfect album, and it's not. It's not. There are problems with this, but we'll talk about it briefly. Time Stands Still at the Iron Hill is about Fingolfin riding the gates of Angband to challenge Morgoth to a duel. Fingolfin wounds Morgoth 7 times, but is eventually killed. And then it goes into the Dark Elf, which is like this short Gregorian chant type interlude. And it refers to Eol, who seduced Turgon's sister and fathered Maiglin, who would eventually betray Gondolin. Any other thoughts on the Dark Elf before we get to Thorn?
not really. No.
Okay, good, because I don't have anything else either. Thorn is a song describing Maeglin's captivity in Angband and Morgoth trying to convert Maeglin to his side with threats and lies. This song starts out with an absolute monster riff. And then I remembered, I don't know this song as well, because often I would turn it off after Time Stands Still at the Iron Hill. But obviously it came back to me, pretty crazy. But I want to mention a couple of things on this track because the song is called Thorn. And maybe you're going to think I'm crazy, but there are spots in the verses where I actually hear Edge of Thorns by Savatage. I'm not even kidding you. And I don't know if it's aptly named because of it, but I hear Savatage on this, and not in the chorus, but in the verses. And while it's not their best song, I do like it. And it's quite frankly better than I remember it. I just don't know that it's as good as some of the stuff before it.
Yeah, it's another one of those songs that I just forgot about, and it's good. It's another one of those really cool mid-tempo songs from this album, and it's a good song. I don't know that there are any bad full-length songs on this album. I know I keep saying full-length because I want to point out that half of the tracks on this album are not really songs. But this is good. I just think maybe granted it's a story, so you can't really change the order, but I just feel like they might have been more well served to have some of those real big banging, heavy hitter songs spread out across the album a bit more. But again, because it's a story based album, that might just not have been possible. But, this is a very good song. It's just, it just doesn't hold up to the impossible standard that songs like Nightfall and Mirror Mirror and Time Stands Still, I think, have set forth up to this point on the album. But I think it should be at least recognized that it's still a very, very good song.
I think that The Elder, which is the next track, is kind of interesting because I feel like it's this piano-laden 3.5-minute somber song that was very much needed at this point, but at the same time, it's not very memorable. So I'm almost not giving it a demerit, even though I don't think the track is particularly great, just because it almost serves like a full-length transitional track. What shines out to me here are the keyboards and the vocals. I think that is very, very prominent, and quite frankly, it's that combination which makes this a one of the listenable track, even though I don't think it's that great. But ironically, I hear a bit of Savatage on this track as well. It's kind of 2 in a row where I hear Savatage, which you wouldn't expect from Blind Guardian, but I think that the keyboards really, kind of shine on this.
Yeah, I think this is just a standout track for Hansi's vocals, because you really just get to hear his vocals without all the guitars and the drums kind of not drowning him out, so to speak, but more like just sharing the stage, I guess you could say. And in this case, it's just Hansi and a piano, and so he really goes for it here. Not a long track, doesn't really have much substance, but it is an impressive vocal performance. And like you said, I think that it was a needed kind of slowdown a little bit, because everything up to this point has been heavy mid-tempo or heavy fast-tempo songs, and so this kind of adds a little bit more of something that's a little bit more pensive, a little bit more contemplative, a little more soft, and I think it works. It's not, it doesn't feel like it's one of those like power ballads that a band threw on an album just to have a power ballad, and it doesn't fit, at all.
No, I agree with that. Why don't you read what this is about before we go into Gnome?
The elder is Elven King Finrod Felagund's farewell to his people, dying from wounds sustained by saving his human friend Beren from a werewolf, thereby fulfilling his oath to the House of Beor. And I get what that's like when you're attacked by a werewolf and contract lupine flu.
That's why I wanted you to read it.
It's like reading about my last, couple of weeks here on this earth. But yeah, so then we go into Nam the Wise, which was a nickname that I was given as a freshman in college because I would show up at random houses and would just eat people's food and tell them stories. So they called me Nam the Wise. I may have made that up, but
or might not have.
Or may not. You had to be there, I guess. This is another segue tune in which Beren mourns his friend Finrod, and Nam means wise and was the name given to Finrod by Beren's forefather Beor. So again, it's another, another kind of, interlude kind of segue type track that goes into another longer tune in When Sorrow Sang.
And this was maybe the second biggest surprise for me. This song is heavy. This song is fast. And this song is very reminiscent of their older material. And quite frankly, if you like those first couple of Blind Guardian albums, you will love, love, love this track. The guitars are absolutely fantastic. The chorus is enjoyable. Not the best, but enjoyable. And the instrumental section, very, very thrashy. I actually like this song a lot, and I had completely forgotten about it. And in terms of the story, it's where Beren sings about his love to the elven princess Luthien and his death at the teeth of Morgoth's wolf Kakarot. So really good song, and probably my favorite on the back end of the disc.
Yeah, it kind of has a similar gait to Mirror Mirror, I would say. Similar kind of tempo, and it's I don't know, probably similarly constructed as well. I don't think it's as good of a song, but it is still a pretty solid song. And again, it's another tune that I kind of forgot about. And when I saw it on the track list, I kind of assumed it was going to be like a ballad based on the title, because it sounds kind of like it would be sorrowful, but it actually musically is actually pretty aggressive. So yeah, another kind of song like you said, I kind of forgot about, and then we kind of move on to like two of these shorter tracks in a row before moving on to the last real full length track on the album. So talk a little bit about Out on the Water and The Steadfast.
So Out on the Water is like this really acoustic guitar interlude, I guess, if you want to call it that. It refers to the last dwelling place of Beren and Luthien. And then The Steadfast is, essentially a song where Morgoth curses his captive Hurin, who refuses to reveal the secret of Gondolin. And you can just hear the anger from the person that kind of does the spoken word track on this part. And then A Dark Passage is like the last, as you mentioned, the kind of like the last proper track on the album. It's where Morgoth ponders his triumph in the fifth battle. I don't love the way this track ends. It's very, very orchestration heavy, which is quite good. And the riffing is very, very good as well. What is interesting, you're going to think I'm crazy. This is a kind of a progressive song in many ways, and it's a bit scattered. And I just don't think it's as tight as some of the stuff before it. But hear me out. If you close your eyes and you listen to this track, I always think of something, and it's not Star Wars. It's actually something else. But do you know that part in The Wizard of Oz where they all dress up in the guards' costumes to rescue Dorothy, and like they're about to storm the witch's castle? the song itself reminds me of that. I don't know why, but I always picture them like dressed up as like the fake guards storming the castle. Again, maybe I didn't take the medication this morning. I'll admit it's a little crazy. I'll put it out there. But there's something about this that always reminds me of The Wizard of Oz for no apparent reason at all, because there's nothing about that on this track. So go ahead and top that, my friend. I give you the floor.
The brain works the way the brain works. I mean,
the brain may be broken, but again, I digress.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have any cute anecdotes to match that one, but it's a solid song. It's arguably my least favorite of all the full songs on the album, though, which is kind of a bummer that it happens to be the last full length song. But I don't know if they were going for kind of because it almost feels like they wanted it to be this big epic track, but they had to kind of cram it into a shorter, it's about a 6-minute song. So, it's fine. It's not a bad song. Like I said, there are no bad songs on the album. I just think that it's probably my least favorite of the songs.
And then it kind of goes out with Final Chapter Thus Ends, which is kind of a bit of an anticlimactic way to end it, I guess, just because it's, it ends the story, it concludes the album, and it talks about Morgoth's victory by the treachery of man, but also of the hope for a new day. Not a terrible way to go out. I just think that that A Dark Passage, the song itself, is just probably not my favorite, so it ends with a little bit of a whimper, but all in all, a fantastic, fantastic album, I think that everyone would agree. And I think that if you polled Blind Guardian fans, I think a number of them would have this as their favorite, but by no means is it like universally like their best.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. It might, I don't know. I was trying to think if I would say this is my favorite Blind Guardian album, but it's up there. I'll say that. Interesting note: the cover art is Luthien dancing before Morgoth, which comes from the tale of Beren and Luthien. So even the cover art is, part of the story, which I appreciate. I will say, I will quote some of the positive reviews that this album has gotten. Metal Hammer has named it in its 10 essential symphonic metal albums list and its 10 essential power metal albums list. So I think, that's high praise, and I'm sure it's in high company. Interesting quote, a Tolkien scholar, Bradford Lee Eden, we're going to go from the scholars in Italy talking about Manowar to the Tolkien scholar. He says that although one can assume that Tolkien was not a headbanger, he finds that in the opinion of his students, the driving energy of the power metal sound is appropriate for the stories. The music conveys rage and despair, which fits lyrics such as "The doom of the Noldor drew near, the words of a banished king, I swear revenge." And he adds that this facilitates discussion of Tolkien's Christian view of the fall of man. So 2 albums in a row we've talked about that actually have had like some scholarly studies done, which I find very interesting.
I can promise really you that will not be the case next week. But before we get there,
hey, you never know.
That kind of puts a nice bow on the episode. What are your thoughts? Like, scale of 1 to 10, what's your score? And more importantly, is it as high or low as it might have been, say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
It's probably higher than it would have been back then, because I think that I, through having a shorter attention span, was really only going back to like 3 or 4 songs and not listening to the whole album, and getting to appreciate songs like The Curse of Feanor and Thorn. So I would give this album. Oh, Siri's getting involved again. I would give this an 8.75. I think that's where my head is at on this one. It's just it's really good. I find that the filler tracks, filler is the wrong word, but just the segues, even though that they're there to serve a purpose as far as the story goes, I just feel like they kind of break up some of the momentum of the album, and then just the fact that it kind of ends in a, I would say that the last two full-length songs are arguably my two least favorite songs on the album, so it kind of ends in a little less, less exciting fashion than the way that it starts. It starts out so strong with Into the Storm and Nightfall and Curse of Feanor and Mirror Mirror, Blood Tears, all these really great tunes. But I mean, it really is still an album worth high praise. It just comes a shade low of a 9 for me. So I'm in complete
I'm in complete agreement with you. It's an 8.75 for me as well. I think there was probably a time where this was definitely in the 9s. I don't know exactly where, but it didn't quite reach 9 level for me, which is rarefied air, but it's damn close. It's very good. And the high points are extremely high and the low points are still good. It's just, they're not as high as the high points, right? So I can't give it a 9, but it's about as close as you're going to get without it actually being in that rarefied air. A fantastic listen. I'm glad we had a chance to go over it. I knew this would be an album that we covered. I just wasn't sure when, so I'm glad that we did. And before I talk about next week's album, which in full candor, normally we're surprised by these things, but I did tell you this one in advance to give you a couple days preparation as we were recording this one a touch late.
Well, before you get there, I just want to say, in case you were wondering, we both gave Imaginations from the Other Side the same score as well. We gave that a 9.0, but we agreed on both of our Blind Guardian albums. So
that's interesting. So we both agree that Imaginations kind of eclipses this, but it's close.
Yeah, not by very much.
Nice. Very, very, very interesting. I want to go over just a couple of some news items because there's been a lot, but we'll just to name a few. I know I'm looking forward to the Halo Effect at Prague Power. They announced their first U.S. tour. They're doing a run of about 8 or 9 shows, mostly in the Northeast and Canada, but a couple of shows in the Midwest as well. They are playing, ironically enough, the day after Halloween in New York City, but I don't think I'm going to hit that just because I know I'm seeing them in Atlanta. But they should put on a good show. They are the consummate pros, so that is something to be mindful of. Additionally, Between the Buried and Me announced a kind of a really interesting tour lineup. They're going to be playing all of their Parallax 2 album, which I believe was their last album, but they're going on tour with 2 bands that I would have never guessed that they would bring out because they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. And that's Thank You Scientist and Rivers of Nihil, which is just a really, really interesting tour lineup to me. They're going out June 16th in Charleston, South Carolina, and ending it at the very end of July in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I think they're doing a run of like well over 30 shows. So good for them. I think that'll be an interesting lineup. I just can't even imagine all 3 of them on the same bill because they're so different from one another in many ways.
I actually got a text from Knops today telling me about that tour and how he is hoping to hit that up, because it was funny. Just the other day, he had mentioned to me that he was wishing that Between the Buried and Me were playing with Haken because I believe they were touring together in Europe.
That's cool.
So it looks like he'll get his chance to see both bands just separately.
Different times.
Yeah.
And then lastly, something you brought to my attention, but I think it's definitely worth noting. As time has gone on, I've really become a big fan of Marcella Bovio's vocals. And she was announced that not only is Stream of Passion doing a pair of reunion shows in September in the Netherlands, but they are coming out with some new music, which I'm very, very excited about.
Yes, I actually threw some money towards their Kickstarter. I think they already met their goals, but I just wanted to make sure that I had, pre-ordered the album because I'm sure I'll end up forgetting about it by the time that it comes out. So that's exciting news because I really I don't know why I convinced myself that these bands are just going to disappear. But I guess the creative itch comes back and needs to be scratched, and we're all here for it.
And we've got 10 fingers to scratch. That being said, an album that somebody had guessed, ironically enough, was an album that I had already chosen for next week. And I told you about this off air to give you a head start, as I mentioned. But we're going back to a band that I saw live about 3 weeks ago, albeit a very, very different incarnation. And that is Vicious Rumors. And we are going to cover Welcome to the Ball from 1991. I cannot believe that this album is 32 years old, but alas, it is. And I say that just because I remembered vividly how I came to know this band and how this album got on my radar. But I will save that for next week, and I hope you enjoy that listen, because we'll be talking about that and bring that to you next Monday.
Yeah, this is a band I really just don't know much of anything about, other than maybe like a handful of songs over the years that you've put on your playlists. So I have already begun to listen to them, and it's definitely something that I could say is enjoyable to me. It's just a matter of how enjoyable, and we'll get into that when the time comes. But yeah, looking forward to that. And again, it's always good to add something new to the old pile of metal knowledge. So
that's why we're here. If you like what you hear, please give us a like and a follow. Give us a 5-star review on your your podcast app or whatever. It does help other people find the show, so we appreciate it. And that being said, I think we will break some new news regarding a soon-to-be Patreon account that will be starting in the not-so-distant future. So we will circle back with that. And in the meantime, sorry that we were a couple of days late. I'm glad that you are feeling well, my friend. And we will come back with some Vicious Rumors next week.
Yeah. Well, just a small spoiler. One of the high tier Patreon things that we're going to be offering is just a podcast of us mispronouncing Lord of the Rings terminology and names. So just a little something to look forward to. I know that that's probably going to cause a lot of people to want to sign up for the highest possible tier.
Because if that doesn't provide you hours of entertainment, I'm not sure what will. But I digress. Enjoy the week, my friend. I look forward to catching up with you soon, and we'll talk some Vicious Rumors. Be well, my friend, and continue to feel better.
I appreciate it. Have a good one, buddy.
Lies down in the bag of